Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Beneath the Surface. Today we will be discussing Muslims in the West and East. Joining us on the show is an Islamic lecturer, SayidZafarAbbas. Thank you very much for joining us, Sayyid.
Thank you.
Let's start off with Muslims in the East always believe that Muslims in the West are less religious, in the sense that because they are in a place where Islam isn't practiced as a whole, then they're more subjected to be in the wrong and do the wrong. Is this really the situation?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. This is a very interesting question. There is certainly a perception by a lot of people in the East that perhaps in the West people aren't as practicing or they aren't as religious, quote unquote, than people living in Muslim countries. However, in my experience, I would not say that that is the case. I would say that in the West, because of the fact that Muslims are not in a majority, many Muslim people, particularly many young Muslim people, feel that their Muslim identity is very strong. They feel it's very important to them, and that compared to the East in some ways, I would not say, it's hard to generalize, but I would say that compared to the East, in many ways, it seems that in the East there's a lot of focus on the ritual parts of the faith, whereas in the West there is more of an understanding of why we believe and why we do certain things that we do, because of the fact that continually Muslims in the West are asked questions about why they believe in what they believe in and why they practice what they practice. So for that reason, a lot of young Muslim people, compared to in Muslim countries, feel the need to know and understand and are better in their understanding compared to those in the East.
Why do you think that is, though? Because in the East there is the foundation, and as a community as a whole, the religion of Islam is shared. If they were Sunni or a Shia sect, they still share the foundations.
So yes, from the outside it sometimes feels a bit strange. However, any person who has lived in a Muslim society for any period of time will attest to the fact that because Islam is everywhere, because everybody around them is Muslim, they feel a sense of taking things for granted, that Islam is already there. People are already Muslims, and we are already Muslims, and this is not really our identity, because we, all around us, everyone is a Muslim. So if I say in a Muslim society I'm a Muslim, the next person will say, well, I'm a Muslim as well, and so am I, and so am I, and so is everybody. So there's no, in a sense, a Muslim person in a Muslim society doesn't even think about the fact that they're a Muslim. Whereas in a non-Muslim society, a Muslim person is always thinking about the fact that I'm a Muslim. A non-Muslim society, a person is always identifying themselves by saying, I'm a Muslim. And therefore, because they are identifying themselves by saying I'm a Muslim, they then are forced to think about, why am I Muslim? Why am I doing these things? The next question after that will be, well, why do you believe in certain thing? Or why do you practice this certain thing in this particular way? So therefore, Muslim in a non-Muslim society is in some ways is forced by the society to think about these things, whereas a Muslim in a Muslim society, the society does not make this demand of him or her, and therefore they don't think about these things. And because they don't think about these things, they fall into a ritualistic kind of interpretation of the faith. Okay, I have to pray because everybody around me is praying, or I'm expected to pray, or I have to go to the Majlis or to the Husayniyah because everybody goes there anyway, and therefore if I don't go, people will think, what's wrong with this person? Whereas a person in the West will consciously think, I have to pray or I have to go to the Husayniyah because I think this is my religious obligation or my religious duty or part of my religious practice to do so, and not just because everybody else is doing it.
So it's mainly because the Muslims in the West are, they have to identify with their religion, that they tend to look it up more. But then when we do look at London, let's say, there are many centres in London for many different communities. However, the activities there are not as much as it used to be. Like in the 90s, for example, in the new millennium, the activities became less, yet people are still more aware of their religion. Why do you think this is?
I think that in the new millennium, of course, many particularly important or significant things happened, which has led the Muslim identity in non-Muslim societies, particularly in the West, to become more cemented. Of course, we can't have any discussion about Muslim identity if we don't talk about September 11, 2001, and following from that, everything else that happens after it. Everything that happens after it is all related back to what happened in New York on that day. Whether we talk about the Bali bombings in 2002, or we talk about the Iraq war in 2003, or we talk about July 7th bombings in 2005, everything is related back to that. And every time something like this happens, so it almost, there's always this sync, every time people start to forget about one thing, something else happens, and then it brings things back into the fore again. Or then, after 2005 and 2006, when the Danish newspaper prints cartoons about the Holy Prophet of Islam, and so on and so forth. The list is so endless, we could just do a whole show on all the things that have happened. But every time something like this happens, that Muslim identity is reinforced, because every time something like this happens, the Muslims are asked, why did this happen? Who are these people who did it? Are you responsible? Are you condemning them? Are you apologizing? So on and so forth. All these things that happen. Currently, what's happening with the cartoons that have been printed by the French newspaper, same kind of thing. It's that every time something like an incident like this happens, Muslims feel their identity becoming even more strengthened. Because in the 1990s, for example, when I was growing up in London, it was very rare to hear the word Islam or Muslim in the newspaper or on the news, because it was not a topic. What was discussed in the 1990s in the news was, for example, the IRA or what was happening. I guess in some ways when the news spoke about Bosnia, even there they didn't really talk about Islam, but yes, Muslims are mentioned because Bosnians are Muslims. But all of that changed in 2001. Everything changed. All of a sudden, every single thing that would happen was related to Islam, was related to Muslims, or something or another to do with Muslims or Islam was being talked about in the news. And every time that happens, as a Muslim living in the West, I felt growing up that Islam was now all of a sudden, everybody was talking about it. Everybody wanted to know about it. Everybody wanted to know about Islam. Everyone wanted to learn about Islam. Everybody wanted to find out about Islam. And this emphasized not only what they wanted to know, but also every person who identified as Muslim was also feeling, I need to know more about my religion. I need to learn more about my religion so that I can answer these questions, so that I can really tell people what Islam is all about.
I agree with the sense that for some Muslims that they did actually strengthen. But then can't we say that for some it actually made them weaker in the sense that they were attacked for being a Muslim? For example, if they were in France when the bombings took place, they then made a rule that you're not allowed to wear a headscarf in university, for example. So that kind of made people, it was kind of like attacking their religion, for example. So didn't that make it more difficult for them?
Certainly, there's no doubt that after 2001, for many Muslims, especially those who appeared to be Muslims, even if they were not Muslims, life was made more difficult. There's no doubt about that. After 2001, in the United States, it was very common to hear from friends, family, on the news that Muslim women wearing headscarves were being attacked. for wearing hijab, or people mistakenly considering people wearing turbans to be Muslims were also being attacked, to the extent that this community had to go out and have processions and say we are not Muslims. And in other European countries, for example, as you mentioned, there were significant difficulties. When I visited different European countries after 2001, I sensed and I found the real kind of fear that Muslim communities in those places felt. People were afraid to go out wearing hijab, people were not comfortable having a beard, so on and so forth. These things which would make you appear to be a Muslim were things that were really creating issues for people. It made issues and it made difficulties for people wearing the headscarf or wearing or having a beard when they traveled, for example. So that is no doubt an issue that arose after 2001. And many people, I guess, that we have to say, many people did really feel attacked. They felt victimized. They felt insecure about what they believed in. And many people didn't really want to identify as Muslim anymore after 2001. They decided that they would not talk about religion anymore. They would not mention their faith. They would not really practice their faith in the way that they used to, because they felt threatened, or they felt victimized, or they felt afraid. And that is certainly a reality. So there is both sides of what happened. Yes, many people felt strengthened by the fact that people wanted to know more about Islam, but many people, for many other reasons, perhaps the fact that they didn't have the knowledge, perhaps the fact that they didn't have, for them own selves, didn't have the conviction in what they believed in, felt that they wanted to not identify as Muslim anymore. They didn't want to talk about Islam. They didn't really want to express their faith in the way that perhaps they used to before this happened.
Muslims in the West, mainly in the UK, they don't really have as many resources, let's not say resources, but places to actually go to gain as much knowledge as they can. And living in the West, we all know that London is the busiest life, that however much you want to make time, to learn, to have an extra curriculum, let's say, or extra course on the side, you can never manage it with work or university or schooling. How do you think that we as Muslims can actually better ourselves with the knowledge of Islam and being, of course, practical in actually doing so?
I think that it is certainly very tough, whichever Western country you live in, whether it's in UK or in America or in a European country, where the lifestyle is intentionally has been made in such a way that it is very busy for us to go and pursue something else outside of work hours. However, there's certainly ways, if a person feels that this is something that's important to them, then just like we make time for other things that we feel important in our schedule, we will make time for them. Some of the simple things that I mentioned, for example, is that, out of the time that we allocate for entertainment in our lives, if we were to reduce some of that, and not all of it, and say that instead of watching TV, or instead of playing PlayStation, or whatever thing that I like to do for entertainment, I'm going to allocate this much time from that time to study or learn about Islam. And alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, in today's day and age, we have better resources and we have more easily accessible resources. Lots of things, in fact, many things are available online. And in addition to that, it is much easier now to connect people from different parts of the world. So, even the secular education system are looking into and have already devised systems of online tutoring, of things that take place over video conferencing over the computer. So you just sit in your home, you don't even have to go anywhere. Obviously the main issue that people have is with time and obviously traveling to and from places, and therefore if you can reduce that and have this system where you just do it while you're still at home, you're saving a whole lot of time and you're doing it on the platforms that you're already using anyway. So certainly there are ways in which to do that, but we will have to sacrifice something. We'll have to sacrifice some entertainment time, we'll have to sacrifice some time that we do other things in order to prioritize this, if we really think that it's important. If we feel that this is something important that we need to learn about. And of course, reading a book, one of the tips that I often give to my friends or students is that if we have to travel to and from somewhere, then maximize that traveling time by taking a book with you. And that way, at least, the 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in some cases that people travel, at least that time is not wasted. You are being productive by reading something and hopefully increasing your knowledge as a result of that as well.
You said that some Muslims may not find it necessary to study Islam, but isn't it one of the main points actually for a Muslim that they should understand or have knowledge? Of course, none of us can have the full knowledge, but at least have the basic knowledge of why we're practicing or the religion, or why we believe in a specific topic.
Certainly, when it comes to matters of what we believe in, it is the obligation of each and every one of us to find out why we believe in what we believe in, at least to the extent that I can convince myself. If I cannot convince anybody else, at least I can convince myself that the reason why I believe is this. And as far as practices are concerned, yes, it would certainly, especially in the society that we live in, it would be very useful for us to know the reasoning behind certain things, and it is important that we should know. However, it's not an obligation to know. Our obligation when it comes to Furu'ad-Din, when it comes to A'mal, is to know what the hukum, what the ruling is, and to follow that. However, to know the reasoning behind it is not an obligation, but it would certainly be beneficial in our society, where people do want to know, why do you do this? Why do you carry out this practice? Why do you go to this place? Why do you do this? Why is this timing for this and why is this timing for that? It is certainly useful for us to know. And if we can make the time to learn those things and find out those things, then it would be what we call nurun ala nur. It would really be great. However, at least the very minimum is that we should know what our beliefs are and why we believe in what the things that we believe in, at least to the point that I can convince my own self, my own conscience, that this is why I believe. This is why I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is why I believe in His Prophet, this is why I believe in the A'immah, this is why I believe in the Day of Judgment, this is why I believe in all the things that are expected of me to believe in as a Muslim. Past that, if a person can devote the time, devote the dedication, go into learning more about that, then that is great. The obligation is to that point, that they should know why they believe in what they believe, and they should know the rulings to do with the day-to-day practices that are the obligations upon us. That, as far as the obligations are concerned, that is what is necessary for a Muslim to know.
Islam in the West, after the new millennium, as you said, has been in the media a lot. If it was about so-called terrorist attacks, or if it was about cartoons, and the reactions that Muslims had towards the cartoons. What do you expect with, when these things are mentioned in the media? What is a Muslim, and how is a Muslim meant to react with these situations?
I think it's more important for us to be proactive than to wait for something to happen and then to react to it. That shows that we're waiting for something to happen. Rather than that, we should be proactive. And before something happens, we should be out there doing whatever we can in order to let people know about the reality of what we believe in and our faith in school, college, university, workplace, wherever we are. And we will find, and I found in my experiences, and I've mentioned this before as well, that many people are not aware of anything about Islam other than what they know from the media. And therefore they will find it very shocking, surprising in some ways, that Islam is not what they associate Islam to be. So therefore is a greater obligation upon me to make sure that I am helping them find out about real Islam, about true Islam from them, and not just by what I say and not just by what I tell them, but the way that I am. So that, the characteristics that, for example, this is a month of the Holy Prophet of Islam, and we always remind ourselves, primarily I guess, that the Holy Prophet of Islam in the pre-Islamic time, in the age of Jahiliyyah, was called Sadiq and Amin. He was called As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. And this is from people who don't know he's a prophet. They don't know he's come to spread the religion of Islam. They just know that there's a young man in Mecca who, whenever we ask him something, we've never heard him tell a lie. Whenever we entrust him with something, he always returns it back. He doesn't, disappear with it. So they called him, as a result of that, they called him As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. So therefore that's a blueprint for all of us, that if I am a follower of the Holy Prophet of Islam, then my life should be truthful as well. My life should be trustworthy as well. My life should have these good characteristics in it before I open my mouth to speak about anything. And therefore, when a person looks at me, or a person meets me, or a person knows me, or a person has my name or my mention is made in front of him, then that person should say, oh, that person, he is truthful, or that person, he's trustworthy, I can trust him with my life, or that person, he is this good characteristic that is within him. And that is much more of an effective way to teach that person about Islam than however many lectures that I give and however many things that I tell that person, because actions are much more powerful. When a person acts in a particular way and that person observes that person acting in that way, then they realize that really this person is not just saying what they're telling me about, but they actually believe it and they actually act upon it. They actually consider that part of their lives.
But then this is kind of like mainly for those who work with people from diverse cultures and beliefs. But then when, for example, going to uni and half your life is actually literally it's on public transport. So with that, what can Muslims do, especially those who wear the hijab, for example, as they mainly show and can be identified as Muslims easier to a male,
Correct.
for example. So what can they do on a daily basis that would, inshallah, represent Islam in the best way?
I think that the importance of akhlaq, even in these situations, cannot be underestimated. If I'm traveling on public transport and I go out of my way to be good to people, then definitely people will remember that. And, we underestimate the fact of how people can be affected by the way that I act. So if I'm traveling on public transport and it's very busy, and somebody who gets on the bus or the train who clearly cannot stand, and I give my seat up to them, then that person will definitely remember me. And if that person is wearing a hijab, for example, they will say the person in the hijab gave up the seat to me, for example. Or another, other times where it's very busy on public transport, and there's little things that people will do to make your life better. And definitely, for sure, people will remember who that person was, especially if they're so identifiable, for example, if they're wearing a hijab. And that is very, very, very important, because the Holy Prophet of Islam himself says that إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was only sent to the people so that I could perfect the akhlaq of the people. That means that everything in Islam, whether it's prayer or fasting or hajj or zakat or khums or whatever we believe in or whatever we practice, it's all there to make sure my akhlaq becomes better. And that if prayer and fasting and hajj and zakat and khums and all these things are not improving my akhlaq, then something's going wrong. Because the Holy Prophet Islam saying innama is adatul hasr. Adatul hasr means that this is the only thing. There's no other reason for me to have been sent as a prophet, as a messenger to you, except that I am here to perfect akhlaq of people. Therefore, everything that I've been ordered to do is supposed to take me towards akhlaq, towards good character. And these little things which we might think are very insignificant or very unimportant are really very important. They could be the difference between a person. If you take the converse of that, if somebody was not good to a person on public transport and they happen to be wearing a hijab or they were identifiable as a Muslim in some other way, then definitely that person remember, that person in the hijab didn't give up their seat for me, or that person in the hijab was rude to me, for example, so on and so forth. So that is very, very important, and people will remember that. And in that sense, it really is these little things which can make a big difference to both how people perceive Muslim societies, but also how we can let people know about the religion of Islam and what it's all about.
When we look at the situation that took place in France, for example, and even in Denmark when they did caricatures and cartoons about our Holy Prophet, as we Muslims believe that we love our Holy Prophet more than our own selves and our parents and our children, etc. How can we react in a way that, of course, would represent the teachings of our Holy Prophet, at the same time make sure that situations like this don't happen again, because they keep saying it's freedom of speech, etc., but that's not really the situation, as they're attacking our Holy Prophet, alayhi salatu salam.
No doubt that when things like these happen, because we love the Holy Prophet of Islam, we feel offended and we feel angry. And no doubt that even in the lifetime of the Holy Prophet of Islam, the Holy Prophet was attacked. So that is the first lesson for us, that the attack on the Holy Prophet of Islam is not something that's new. It didn't happen today or in 2006 or in 2001. It has been happening for 1400 years. And the greatness of the Holy Prophet of Islam is that even though this attack has been happening on him for 1400 years, he's still the Holy Prophet of Islam. That has not changed. That in itself should give me solace that the Holy Prophet of Islam is still the Holy Prophet of Islam. He still has this many billions of people following him, even though he's being attacked for 1400 years by Muslims and non-Muslims. But more importantly, I think, is that I always say that it's very important for a Muslim, and there's a hadith, in fact, from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, which says that a believer can be everything, but a believer cannot be foolish. So it is imperative for a believer to realize that sometimes, in fact many times, when something is being made a big deal out of, then that means that there's something else behind it which people don't want you to make a big deal out of. And therefore it's imperative for me to find out what is that something else which is behind it, which is not being made a big deal out of. And whether that is more important than this which is being made a big deal out. So for example, the very week where this incident happened with the cartoons being published about the Holy Prophet of Islam is the same week in which 2,000 people were killed in Nigeria by Boko Haram. And it's the same week where 7 people were killed in Husseiniya in Pakistan for celebrating the birthday of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So the question I should be asking myself is that would the Holy Prophet of Islam be more offended by somebody drawing a cartoon about him, or would he be more offended about all these lives that are being lost by people who claim to be his followers? So would he be more offended by that, or would he be more offended by this? And certainly I'm not saying that cartoons are not offensive or the purpose of them were not to be offensive. But all this whole news coverage and media coverage over the cartoons for many days eclipsed the fact that what happened in Nigeria and what happened in Pakistan, which didn't even make the news in most cases. Most people didn't even know that 2,000 people, which is a lot of people, were killed in Nigeria, or people were killed in Pakistan for no other reason apart from the fact that they were celebrating the Milad of the Holy Prophet of Islam. And a person would then pause and ask the question of, you killed people because they drew cartoons of the Holy Prophet Islam, and then you killed people because they were celebrating and honoring the Holy Prophet Islam. So what do you want? What do those people who are killing people in the name of the Holy Prophet Islam, what do they want? And therefore it's imperative for us to look at those things, to look at who are the people who are carrying out the killing, who are the people who are taking advantage of the sentiments of the Muslim, because they know that the Holy Prophet of Islam is a person, is a character who is dear to all Muslims regardless of their sect. Then are they doing something so that Muslims go into a trap, and are Muslims just going into the trap without realizing that there's something else behind this, there's something which is much more important that we should be talking about, rather than whether cartoons are allowed or not, whether cartoons are offensive or not. What is behind all of this is more important for us to be talking about. So that's something I think that is more important that we look at whenever something like this happens. Whenever something happens and something is given a lot of media coverage, I always become suspicious that there's something else that's behind this which the media doesn't want us to know, which the news is deliberately taking the attention of us. So they'll say, well, we reported it as well, but it was reported in page 14, whereas the first 10 pages were all talking about the cartoons. So and then the reaction that takes place after that. So all of these things are for us to think about, that whenever we, first of all, we should be proactive when we're talking about the Holy Prophet and about Islam. But when something like this happens, before we react, we should pause and think and say, yes, we love the Holy Prophet of Islam, but what would the Holy Prophet of Islam have done in this situation? What would his focus and what would his attention be upon? And will mindlessly just going out and as happens in some Muslim countries, for example, damaging our own property or killing our own people, will that solve the problem? No, it won't. So therefore we have to be more measured in our response. We have to stay calm and collected, as the Holy Prophet of Islam remained calm. When people attacked him, when people threw rubbish at him, when people called him all kinds of names, he remained calm. So therefore, as followers of the Holy Prophet of Islam, we also have to remain calm. That is not to say that we don't have a reaction, but whatever reaction that we have, we have to make sure that we stay calm in that reaction, so that we don't allow them to say, well, you tried to rile us up and we got riled up. No, you tried to rile us up, we still stayed calm.
Well, that is how the people in the UK, for example, are acting. But then, for example, when they made a video about the Holy Prophet and they were making him out to be as a womanizer mainly, that was one of the main points. People in Egypt, for example, killed the one of the main important people, which kind of affected us in the UK or in the West, because we're all Muslims, we're all kind of painted with one brush, which is a negative thing, but still that is the reality and that's the situation. So when this stuff does happen, or for example in France when the two men went and killed, Muslims in the UK also got affected. What are we meant to do in these situations?
So in this situation, of course, it's very difficult. One person does something that I don't know. He does something that is not something that I've recognized as Islam. I don't know this person. I don't agree with this, but I am facing the consequences of that. In that sense, in that scenario, in that case, it is difficult to stay calm. But it's even more important for me to stay calm in that situation, to show that what this person has done is not what I recognize, is not what I believe in. It is not the Islam that I recognize, that I've been taught, that I believe in, that I practice. It's none of these things. And more importantly, we have to come out and say, look, if you want to talk about the Holy Prophet of Islam, if you want to discuss the historical narratives regarding the Holy Prophet of Islam, if you want to critique the Holy Prophet of Islam, if you want to talk about his actions, his character, then do so in an academic manner. And if you did so in an academic manner, nobody would be offended. If that's really what you're trying to do. If you are genuinely sincere about critiquing the Holy Prophet of Islam, then do so in a manner that befits the standard that we've set for ourselves. And if you do that, then nobody will be offended. No one will find anything offensive. However, if your whole purpose is to offend people, then we will definitely come out and be calm and say that, remember that if you're trying to cause offense to people, then we've got laws preventing people from offending people. In various European countries, it is a crime to deny various kinds of genocide. Almost every European country has a law saying that all these kinds of genocides which we have mandated, which are considered genocide by the United Nations, to deny those genocides is a crime. You'll go to prison, for example. Or the fact that if you offend a certain group of people, or you offend a certain religion, or you offend a certain race, then you'll be placed with a racist label or a xenophobic label. And then we'll say that, why did you censor these cartoons or these people for doing these kind of things? We'll say, well, this person was racist, or this person was xenophobic, or this person broke the law. So that shows that when it comes to freedom of speech, you your own selves have put certain limitations on the freedom of speech. So when we discuss it, remaining calm and saying, these are the principles that you set out and said that, we won't offend this group of people. Why is it a crime to deny this kind of genocide? Because it will offend that group of people. Why is it a crime to deny this genocide? Because it will offend another group of people. Why is it a crime to be racist? Why will we be prosecuted for being racist? Because it will offend this group of people. Why is it a crime to be xenophobic? Because it will offend this other group of people. So all these things you've put into law to limit people's freedom of speech because it will be offensive. Whereas in this case, you clearly said that our purpose was to be offensive. We wanted to offend. The
thing is, they don't say that they're being offensive. They say that it's, they're using their rights of being, freedom of speech, and that's their main thing. They don't actually say, we want to offend you, or we have something against you or against your religion or your prophet. No, they say, this is freedom of speech. I believe that the prophet is this, and that, so I want to, do a cartoon or do a movie about it.
So like we said, that we have laws in all these countries which say that freedom of speech is limited. It is limited because it can cause offense to other people. Even in the case of denying various kinds of genocides, it's not limited to just cartoons or pictures. Even academics, even professors who have written challenging the numbers of people dying in various genocides have been put into prison. Now, I'm not saying that challenging those genocides or challenging the numbers of the genocides is the right thing or wrong thing. What I'm saying is that in the past, people have been put into prison for academically challenging the numbers. They weren't being offensive. They were not going out and saying, we want to offend this group of people. All they were doing was they were challenging the numbers of people killed in a particular genocide and saying, well, maybe this many people were not killed and this many people were killed. Yet they were put into prison. And that was the law of that country, and is the law in various European countries. On the other hand, when we say that you are causing offense to people by creating a caricature or a picture of the Holy Prophet of Islam because we find pictorial depictions of the Holy Prophet of Islam to be offensive, then they will say, well, no, this is freedom of speech. So the question therefore is that you have limited freedom of speech in the past. What makes this freedom of speech different from that freedom of speech, or this situation different from that situation? And that is where Muslims should be asking the question. And when you're asking a question, it's much more effective than rioting or being violent or doing all those things which will give them more of an excuse to attack you. If you stay calm, you ask questions, you say to them, well, explain to me the difference between this situation and this situation. Why is this situation different from this situation? Why is it that you felt the right to protect this group's feelings, but you did not feel it right to protect this group's feelings?
That is unfortunately the situation which is taking place around the world today. And unfortunately, the Islamic religion is being attacked constantly, but inshallah, all together and with the message of our Holy Prophet, we will go in that direction and spread the peace which he wanted to, he taught us.
Inshallah.
So thank you very much for being with us, Sayyid, and thank you very much for watching Beneath the Surface. See you next time.